I am thrilled to bring up Quinn. Quinn is a 13-year-old from Baltimore, Maryland, goes by they, them pronouns. Hi, Quinn.
Hello.
What grade are you in?
Eighth.
Eighth grade. Okay. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you started to become an advocate? Because you have done a lot of speaking out, on behalf of yourself, on behalf of issues that you care about. So kind of, can you tell everybody just like how you got started, doing this kind of advocacy work?
It started in the late sixth grade because I had friends and myself included that felt uncomfortable with the bathroom situation in our school because there were only male and female bathrooms, and it made people feel uncomfortable using bathrooms. And like that was problematic because some people like don't want certain people in their bathroom, and other people are afraid to use the bathrooms because of that. And so people had to like not couldn't use the bathroom all day. So I went to the Board of Education, and I told them how it was making people feel.
What did your school board say in response to that?
They didn't do anything in response.
Do you have other students who were speaking up like you or who's supporting you?
No.
No. Okay, that's a hard position to be in. What's the status at your school now for that?
Thanks to my mom, we do have a gender inclusive bathroom at our school now.
That's amazing. So how long did that take for you to get the board to make that decision?
Um, I don't think it was a board decision. I think it was a school decision. Um, and it took about 2 years.
Wow. Okay. And so not only speaking at your school board, did you have other conversations with like principals or superintendents or kind of tell us like how you went about like making, pushing for something that you wanted in your school? Oops.
Guidance counselor about problems, and I kept track of every time somebody said something or did something hurtful. And my mom also had meetings with my principal quite often to talk about problems that had been brought up in our school.
What was your principal supportive, or what was your principal's thoughts on the matter?
I think he was afraid to do anything about it. So he didn't really do anything about it. And he kind of like told everybody that that our school was a safe environment already and there weren't any issues.
That must have been really hard if you're telling the principal that that's not true.
Yeah.
And that you sounds like you kept speaking up, that you didn't get discouraged, or what did that,
I
how did it
just
impact you?
I'm not gonna stop until like my I start seeing change.
Well, good for you, because I know a lot of people do give up. So that's a really, at 13 years old, to be having that attitude, that'll change the world. So what issues beside the bathroom issue did you advocate for in your school and at your school board?
I advocated to have a like better program for teachers to get trained so that they felt comfortable using students' preferred pronouns and addressing problems that come up in their classrooms. Um, and making teaching students like the truth and what's happening and going on, and how they can like be supportive to their friends.
So what's what was are the teachers at your school, do you have some really supportive teachers and some who are not so much, or like how did, yeah.
We have, uh, we have like some teachers that are supportive, some teachers that are not supportive at all, but like most of the teachers just like don't really know what to do. And so I don't think it's that they're not supportive, they just aren't quite sure what to do.
They need to be educated.
Yeah.
So what happened with you asking for that kind of training for your teachers?
Um, it was my having meetings with my principal, which my mom did a lot of, and talking with my guidance counselor, and like just me myself telling teachers like when they're doing something right and when they're doing something wrong.
How did did you have any teachers who maybe didn't appreciate that, or how did that work?
Yeah, I had one teacher that did not like that at all.
Did that get resolved, or how did you get that resolved?
It didn't get resolved.
Didn't get resolved. Okay. Did they get the teacher training that you were asking for, or is that something you're still pushing for?
I'm still pushing for that.
Okay. Do you have any supportive teachers who are like helping you push for that
Yes.
more? Or you said like there's one who's not so great about it, but do you feel
I
like
have
some are,
two
or
teachers that are very supportive and helpful.
that's great. That's great. Are there, and I know you said that other students weren't super helpful with the bathroom, but what about with like teacher training? Anybody working with you on that?
Yeah, my mom has a person that's talking with a specialist that's talking with my principal, and trying to help give teachers training.
Saw a question in the chat that I think might be helpful here. About how did you give teachers feedback? Like just because there's a lot of adults here, Quinn, that probably would not know what to say or do. How did you approach your teacher and give feedback? Like how did you start that process?
So if like something made me uncomfortable that a teacher said or did during class, I would stay behind after class and let the teacher know that what they did made me feel uncomfortable and I wasn't okay with it. Or if they did something good, then I would like tell them after class that that made me feel happy and accepted by them.
Oh, so you gave positive and negative feedback.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really great. Now, how did you learn to do that? Was that something that your mom's helped you learn, or is this something that just came natural to you? Because there's a lot of adults who wouldn't even be able to do that very well.
Um, I guess it just came naturally to me.
That's great. So what other issues are you passionate about? Or what other things are you advocating for? I know we talked about those two topics, but there's probably more that you are being pretty vocal about.
Um, I want to make sure that teachers and school staff and everybody really knows that saying and calling people slurs is not okay and is like something that's just really, really bad and shouldn't be socially accepted at all. And I want to make everybody feel safe regardless of their sexual orientation, their gender, their religion, their race, like their background, everything. I want everybody to have a safe space somewhere and to feel accepted.
I think there's a lot of people on this call who would love to help you doing that. How are you doing that? Like, how are you trying to make that change, not only at your school, but in the world in general? Because I know you've done more than just speak at school board.
I go to panels and give speeches at different universities. I was on a panel discussion recently at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I've spoken at Johns Hopkins University.
What were you talking about on those panels?
The panel at Rutgers was to how sex education can be taught better and more up to date in schools. And then the one at Johns Hopkins wasn't, I actually was not expecting it to be a panel discussion. I came into it thinking I was going to be giving people a speech, and I did. And then like halfway there in the car, I found out that I was going to be on a panel discussion also, and I had no idea what a panel was, and I had to get taught what a panel was like halfway there.
How did you think you did? Did you think you held your own?
Yeah, I think I did.
That's pretty impressive to get to thrown up into something that you didn't even know what you were getting yourself into. So can you explain to everybody on this call why it's really important to have gender inclusive restrooms and locker rooms in your school?
I think it's important to have gender inclusive bathrooms and locker rooms in our school because being in a certain bathroom can make some people feel gender dysphoria. Which means that they're uncomfortable in their body and don't feel right. Because if somebody identifies as male and isn't allowed into the boys' bathroom because of their biologic gender, and then they would feel uncomfortable in going into the girls' bathroom because they don't identify as a girl. And it can also make like it could make girls who are using the girls' bathroom feel uncomfortable that there's a transgender guy in their bathroom. And so there should be a inclusive bathroom so that where everybody knows that it's going to be used by all students and they are accepting of that. And by using that bathroom, they acknowledge the fact that all students are allowed to use that bathroom.
Is that part of the making the school feel welcoming and inclusive for everybody?
Yeah.
No, you mentioned the bathroom at your school. What about like locker rooms and things of that nature?
Our locker room situation has not changed. We still have a boys and girls locker room. And we have students at our school who feel uncomfortable using the locker rooms because they are forced to use the girls' locker room because their sex is female, but they don't identify as female. So it's like really painful for them to have to use that locker room because that's not what they identify as. And we also don't have any sort of locker room for students who aren't male or female. So they just kind of have to pick one.
How does that impact you, if you don't mind me asking?
It makes me feel pretty uncomfortable because my PE teacher, he was like, he said I could change in like the staff bathroom that wasn't currently being used, which was like weird. I wasn't gonna do that. And he said the other thing I could do was I could change in the boys' locker room, and I couldn't change in the girls' locker room because I was born male. And so my only option was to change in the male's locker room.
Okay. And is that something that you've been advocating for then too with your principal and your school board? And
I mostly right now, that isn't my top priority. My top priority is just to make sure all students feel safe and welcome and nobody's calling each other slurs and teachers are being educated, but I'm trying to get there.
so I love the fact that you're trying to make an inclusive environment at your school, but that's a pretty broad thing to do, right? Beside
Yeah.
getting teacher training, which is a completely wonderful idea, what other types of policies are you trying to get implemented at your school?
Making sure like a zero hate speech tolerance policy. So if anybody says any form of hate, it should be punished and that shouldn't be accepted at all. And all students should have at least, well, they should be able to trust any teacher, but at least one, and have a teacher that they feel safe and comfortable talking with, or an adult in our school.
I can definitely see why a zero, hate policy would be important for all kids at your school. What's the policy now? Like what happens now when something like that happens?
We do have a zero tolerance hate speech policy, but it nobody really cares about it. People call each other slurs all the time and nobody does anything about it. So it's not really being used the way it's meant to.
Is that, so you trying to bring that up with your principal or trying to have a better system for that to be reported?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Uh, so I know it's what you just talked about that. So the slurs or things that are happening in school, especially if it's related to, gender identity or sexual identity, how should teachers respond to that? Like, what would you like to see happen with like the teacher's response?
They should tell the student that it's not okay, but I also feel like they should tell the student why it's not okay, because just telling somebody that they shouldn't do something isn't really going to make them stop doing it unless they have a reason to stop doing it. So the teacher should explain how that can make a student feel and how much it can hurt a student mentally and that's why they shouldn't say it.
Have you seen teachers do that? I know you said there's some who are not super supportive, but have you seen teachers be able to successfully do that?
Only one of my teachers.
Only one of your teachers? What kind of impact did it make on the student? Did you see a change or?
I think it did make a change. I don't feel like it was enough of a change for the students to stop saying the slurs, but it was enough of a change for the students who are being negatively impacted by the slurs to feel more safe and comfortable in the school.
That's important. That makes a lot of sense. So you're saying that because the teachers were standing up and advocating and supporting and calling out the bad behavior, that makes it feel like a more welcoming place for you.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So I know you mentioned speaking on some panels at some universities. Just curious. So I know you've been doing a lot of advocacy at your school. How are you all of a sudden getting invited to universities? Like, how are you getting your name out there and finding your way to panels and things like that at these big name universities?
My mom's gender specialist helps find opportunities for me where I can give speech.
That's not true.
It's not?
No, you remember, you spoke at Hopkins because our friend Will invited you to speak at Hopkins. And then everybody in the audience at Hopkins was like, hey, can we get that kid for our panel?
Gotcha.
That's how that happened.
Thank you for the mom off camera, Casey. Thank you. So how was that experience for you? I know you kind of talked about it already just a little bit, but was that a thrill? Was that scary? Was that like, how did you feel walking out of doing that kind of work? And
it was exciting and also kind of scary because like it's a huge audience full of adults and like I don't really know what their reaction is going to be or if it even is going to do anything, but it's also exciting to just get up on stage and like tell everybody what I think.
is it something you're going to do again?
Definitely.
Now, have you testified in, I can't remember if have you testified in front of any kind of like elected officials or any bodies like that? Have you done anything like that?
I spoke in front of the Board of Education.
Board of Education. Okay. I wasn't sure. I could not remember, Stephanie, if you'd said that there was some more other legislative stuff. Would you ever want to do that? Would you ever want to go in front of like your state legislature or Congress or something like that? That'd be something you'd be willing to do?
That would be huge, yeah.
That would be huge. Well, it's good to know. I'm going to keep that in mind next time we hear about something like that. How can adults and parents and teachers best support students who are trying to advocate for their you know, for their civil rights, for their human rights, like what advice would you give for other, let's start with parents. What advice would you give to parents who want to help support kids who are advocating like you?
Just creating a safe environment in your house where your kids like feel respected and safe, and like they can trust you and tell you any, like however they're feeling and who they are, without feeling like it would negatively impact them in any way by like sharing bad information.
And I know no one's perfect, so I know a lot of parents make mistakes. So what would your be if, and your mom can jump into if she wants to offer any opinions on this. I know she's off camera. But any you know, if a parent doesn't do a great job at that, but really wants to try, any advice there?
One of the hardest things to do is apologizing and admitting that you've done something wrong. And you can't take back what you've done, but you can't change the past, but you can create a better future. So if you just apologize and acknowledge that what you did was wrong and you shouldn't have done it, then you can help create like a better future for your self and for the people around you, and then learn from what you did wrong to help make it better in the future.
Do you don't feel like on the spot, but do you have any like books or any resources or anything that like maybe your family has read that you would recommend to other families?
I don't think so.
I think so. Stephanie, do you have anything?
Well, we read Stamped as a family, and I think that was pretty helpful in terms of opening our eyes to some different perspectives.
100%. So I know you're very busy with their advocacy in school. What other hobbies do you have? What do you like to do when you're not doing this kind of advocacy work?
I like drawing, making and listening to music, and skateboarding.
What's your favorite subject in school?
ELA.
What is that?
English language arts, ELA.
Oh, okay. You can tell I'm old. We just used to call that English when I was in school. So you can tell. Okay, I am gonna like look really quickly in the chat. Or Rana, is there any good questions that we should be asking from the chat?
Yes. So one question we had was, what do you wish adults knew more about LGBTQ kids, and how can we help advocate for you, whether we are parents or not?
Something I wish adults knew about LGBTQ kids is that we're just normal people. We're the same as everybody else. There's like, we identify as something that we weren't, as a gender that we weren't born as, or like a sexuality that other than straight, but that doesn't mean we're anything other than human. And so we should be treated like we're any other regular person also.
Yeah, I like that. And there's another question. Have you seen a shift amongst your peers? Do they seem more aware, more comfortable, or more vocal since you started doing advocacy?
I don't think so.
No.
I feel like the other students in my school have the students haven't really changed that much because our school hasn't really changed that much. The environment in our school is very similar to when I first started.
Do you have a like a GSA club? Is that something that your school has?
Yeah, we have a student equity association and a student government association.
Yeah, that's cool.
When you're in 8th grade, correct? You said?
Yeah.
So high school next year?
Mhm.
what do you know about the high school? Is there, I know there may be some different clubs at the high school. Do you know the difference, or have you heard any differences between like middle school and high school? I don't know if you call it a middle school. We call it a middle school here. Your grade level and like going up to the high school.
We call it middle school here also.
Okay.
But mostly I've just heard that like people aren't as focused on like trying to like be popular. They're more focused on just like getting into like a good college and like being better academically.
I just wondered if there was, as kids got older, if you felt or you've heard from other people that maybe there was more supportive environment, or maybe there were more like GSA clubs or things at the high school, or is that not something you know about yet?
I'm not sure about that yet.
Okay. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna look anything else in the chat there, Rana.
Someone asked, so how old were you when you realized that that you identified as non-binary?
I realized I was non-binary. Well, I think I've always known that I was non-binary. I just didn't have like a word to call it until I was 11, I think. Yeah. I knew I was non-binary when I was 11.
Okay. I think I don't see any other questions in the chat. Quinn, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like people to know?
There are lots of opportunities for people to become like more educated if they want to. If coming if getting more knowledge is something that you really want to do, then there are a lot of opportunities for you to learn more. I work for a company called Amaze, and we make like short animated videos that we post on social media teaching people about different questions that people ask us about sexuality and gender identity and sex ed.
Which is your favorite? What are your favorite videos that have you been in the videos or?
No, they're animated.
Oh, they're animated. Okay. What kind of questions do they answer? I would love to look that up. Any favorites?
We ask questions. Well, people have asked questions about what a toxic relationship is, how they can be supportive of their classmates, what it means to be non-binary, and questions like that.
There may be some people who don't really understand that. Do you think you could explain what non-binary means to people who are listening?
So non-binary is for me anyway, it's like not being any gender. So there's like there's male and female. So like non-binary isn't anywhere like on that like spectrum of like male being one end and female being on the other end. It's like on a completely like different spectrum. So it's like I don't identify as like any gender. I'm not male, female, I'm not like anything. I'm just like not a gender because I don't really believe in gender.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. I'm sorry. Rhonda, did you say something? I thought I heard you.
No, there is one question. I think you kind of answered some of it, but I'm gonna kind of rephrase it. Like, what would help you feel safe at school? What things beyond what we've already talked about? Is there anything that you can think of that the adults at school could do to help you feel more safe?
I think they could like have lessons in class where they teach students about gender and sexuality, and that is like normal and okay, so that they understand that it's not just like some like joke on the internet, and it's like it's like real, and it impacts people, and they shouldn't like call people slurs and like make fun of people because it's like who they actually are, and that's not something to like joke about.
When you said that one of the panels you were on was talking about like sex education in school, 8th grade, I don't know, every school is different. Do you guys have that in 8th grade? Do you have sex education in 8th grade?
We do. And I'm in a program at my school called Avid, so I won't miss the sex education portion of 8th grade. Because we learn about like how to apply for like college and time management skills and organization. So I skipped the sex education unit to do that.
Okay. I was going to ask whether you felt, or if you knew like about the unit at your school, whether that it was, you know, something you thought was very comprehensive and inclusive, or if you felt that there was a lot of work to do within your school on that.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
You need some work?
yeah, it
What,
definitely.
what I would love to know why, definitely. What do you think is missing, or what do you think needs to change?
They just don't teach us anything about it like at all. So like a lot of students are just in a space where like they have no like idea what gender or sexuality is because it hasn't been taught to them. So they're just kind of like making it up what it is in their head because they haven't been taught what gender means, what sexuality means, and like so they have no idea what it is.
Yep. If you don't get educated or taught, and no one bothers to try to teach it to you, then a lot of people won't even be able, they won't learn. That can definitely lead to, I can definitely see why that would lead to a not very welcoming or inclusive atmosphere in places. So, what are your goals? What are your goals going forward? What would you like to see happen? I know you kind of touched on this, but especially as you go to school next year.
I just want everybody to feel safe and respected and like they're not any different from anybody else.
Well, I think that's a wonderful goal for your school, for the country, for the entire world. Stephanie, I know you're off camera. Is there anything that we haven't asked or discussed, or you think that we should touch on that we're missing? I know you've seen Quinn present multiple times.
I mean, is there anything else we want to talk about, kiddo? I feel like you've been doing a really excellent job.
Doing a good job.
Thank you. I think that covers a lot of it. Another thing I wanted to bring up though was a lot of times people get confused with the difference between sex and gender. And I think that's an important thing that should be taught because there are 3 sexes, intersex, male and female, and gender is like everything. So sex is just your sex is what your genitals are, and gender is what you identify as.
100%. And I do think that is something that many people do not understand. Well, I know they don't understand because we see them making comments to that effect.
I'm sorry, Julie. We have a good question here. Do you enjoy doing advocacy work? And do you think this is something you'd like to continue to do into adulthood?
I love doing this kind of work, and I would like to continue doing it into adulthood because it makes me feel like I'm making a difference. And if people see me doing what I'm doing, then they can have somebody to like know that is there for them and sees them, and they're not like the only person out there who is going through things that other students like might not be nice about.
Have you ever had anybody reach out and say that you speaking out has helped them?
Yeah.
Does that happen a lot, or is that, you know, something that happens once in a while?
It happens once in a while, but it's nice to hear that I'm making a difference to people.
Yes, 100%. I know that you are making a huge difference. I know a lot of, a lot of people your age would not be willing or not feel comfortable doing the work you're doing. So just really amazing. And I know you're helping a lot of students, and a lot of people. Even just the comments in the chat, you can maybe get a chance to look through some of those. A lot of people saying, that this was not something that they could have done at the age of 13. Yeah. Okay. Anything, I don't think I've missed any of the questions in the chat. Any last thoughts, Quinn? Anything you'd like to tell us before we wrap up for the evening?
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us. We really, really appreciate it. I know that I'm sure everybody here learned a lot. And, I have a lot of hope for the future generation. You guys are, I think, going to do amazing things. And you're showing us that you are already doing that in 8th grade. So we really, really appreciate it. And you can see in the chat, I'll give you a second. You can look in the chat. You're getting a lot of thank yous and you're an inspiration and all of that. So thank you. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for allowing Quinn to come and speak with us, and hope that you all have a good rest of your evening.